I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and if you've been watching, you know I've been carrying the Samsung Galaxy S3 as part of a 30-day challenge. I've gone from the international version to the US version, switched the colors a couple of times, but it's part of an awesome 30-day challenge to help you understand more about the features. You never know, something in a review, because us reviewers, we only get like 72 hours or 96 hours to turn around a review. There are things where I'm like, hey, this feature I thought I liked, 14 days later, maybe I don't like it, or vice versa. Maybe something's frustrating, and then 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, it becomes easier. That's the purpose of these challenges. This is day 24 of the Galaxy S3 challenge. Let me tell you what I found out. So like I said, I've been really impressed with this device on a lot of fronts. If you followed the coverage over the 30 days, all counts been really impressed with both the international version and the US version. Now, like I've said, I'll be the first to tell you the US version has a little bit of a speed deficiency in comparison to the international. I do notice a slight difference between this one and the quad-core Exynos processor. It is a noticeable difference, although, you know, again, keeping in mind that the consumer is probably not going to migrate between the international and the US version. That's something to keep in mind. But still, relatively quick. I'm having some issues. You know, I was noticing this last night when I was on a flight to LA, or flight back from LA to San Francisco, rather, and was stuck for 3 hours, and that was a crazy story within itself. But we'll talk about that maybe later, maybe not. You don't really want to hear about that, but I was noticing speed, a little bit of a lag for all day when I was in LA for meetings. I was there for like 5 hours for meetings. But I noticed a little bit of a lag, and I don't know if it was an application I installed. I actually uninstalled the most recent 2 applications that I had, but still had an issue with some speed stuff. I noticed it was a little bit slow, and I noticed when I was opening stuff up, like Task Killer, bear with me here. Yeah, let me see. That's the downside of using your personal phone on camera. I got a lot of personal stuff on there. Not anything bad by any means, but I don't want to show personal text messages. But you've got a little bit of a lag. You won't notice it as much here, but I see it from time to time when I'm scrolling back and forth through various things. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, it's probably a rogue application that I've installed, although I've been kind of deleting stuff to try and figure out what the culprit is. But a slight slowdown there. I did not experience that on the international version, and I actually carried the international version for about 12 days, if I remember right, before switching to the US build, 12 or 14 days. So that's a little bit of a concern, but we'll talk about that more in the conclusion video. I'm going to bring over the T-Mobile one because, again, Galaxy S3 is Galaxy S3, but I want to show you some of the functionalities like calendar, because you do see a slight difference here, and this was at the request of somebody on Twitter, because I reached out and said, what do you want to see? And they said, hey, the calendar. And so I thought, okay, cool. Agenda over here, and then you can see month, week, day, and then I can tap the button down here. So again, kind of a Samsung personalized calendar here, customizations that look very similar to what you would imagine from Samsung. Quick add event, add task. I can add the title here, but you can see some customizations on TouchWiz's part, rather, with description, reminders, a little bit of a color difference as well. Show me as busy, privacy default, memos, and pictures. Then of course I can add tasks as well and have due dates for those. And I have T9 Trace, which I disable on my personal unit because I don't care for swipe type stuff. But if you like it, the Samsung keypad does come with that out of the box. So that's kind of what the calendar looks like. I know that's kind of a quick overview, and I typically use Agenda, which I don't have any calendar stuff in this one. Obviously, this is a review unit, or this is a review unit that I use on camera, so I don't have any personal stuff on here from work or anything like that. But you can see this is what the Agenda would look like. And then another thing I wanted to point out as well, phone application, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to go to keypad and just dial 611 so you can see kind of what it looks like. And I told you in the earlier videos I was having some issues with the earpiece on the international one. Again, you get the volume option here to add enhanced volume. So if you are having issues, I haven't had any issues with the US ones. Actually, I haven't even had the need to turn this on, but you do have it, and it's there if you need it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Otherwise, browser, still loving the browser, still liking the email functionalities. Gmail, at least the way it looks on Android 4.0, if I'll show you here, for example, it's not my favorite. I've noticed that I just don't care for the layout as much. I'm getting used to it, but I don't care for the layout in comparison to Windows Phone or iOS. I think it's got that, I can't stand the layered look and feel to this. So when I go into Google+, this is not a good example, but if I have like 14 emails, I'm in a thread back and forth with one of my editors or somebody like that, a PR person or somebody I work with on a regular basis, it's just frustrating to scroll back and forth through those. I find it to be a little bit unintuitive. And then down here you've got some stuff, although every now and again you're kind of like, what is that? Like we'll go in here, for example, and you're like, oh, this, or filing cabinet. I mean, obviously you can kind of guess, and then you can click on it, but that's the biggest thing. I don't care for the layout necessarily of Gmail on Android 4.0, but that's a minor thing. If that's the least of my concerns, then it's still a pretty strong, solid device. Messaging, somebody asked about this as well in the US version. I think I covered this in another video, but you do have the option to change the background stuff as well. You can change the background style, and then you can change the bubbles as well, so I can go in here and change those, much like I can in the international build. You've got some nice customization options, and then those will change when I get text messages. So, like I said, 2,100 milliamp hour battery. Still, that's probably the most impressive thing about this device to me. Even with LTE, which I'm using the AT&T version, even with LTE, it's still strong and is able to make it through the day. It's not quite as strong as the HSPA Plus version, that the international version we started working with, but again, very strong. I can usually make it through a day with moderate use. If it gets into the heavy use, I kind of have to charge around like 8 or 9 at night. So I find myself like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it'll be at like 45% or 50%. And I'll be like, yeah, I probably need to charge that if I'm going out for meetings or going out for events late in the evening. So that's something to keep in mind. But otherwise, really impressed with this device all around. Stay tuned for my conclusion video next week when I talk about the 30 days. Am I going to stay with this? Am I going to go to another device? Am I going to go to another 30-day challenge right away? You're just going to have to find out, friends. Stay tuned to phonedog.com. Follow me on Twitter, phonedog_Aaron. Ask anything. And if you want to see something in the final video, let me know. phonedog_Aaron, Facebook, facebook.com/phonedogab. And hey, if you love this phone, head on over to PhoneDog's official smartphone rankings page at phonedog.com/rankings. Cast your vote for your favorite smartphone. If it's this, maybe you love the 1X. Maybe you're like, that 1X runs circles around that Galaxy S3. I don't know why you talk like a grandpa. I don't know why in my mind that made sense for a good impersonation. But go to phonedog.com/rankings. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. More to come on the Galaxy S3 30-day challenge on phonedog.com.